They forced my sister 6 months pregnant into a tool shed and told her to take off her clothes. They called it a security inspection, like humiliating a terrified woman was somehow procedure. That moment burned into me because I knew if I stayed quiet, if I let it slide, they would win, and silence was exactly what they were counting on. My name is Brandon Kessler. I used to draft compliance rules for the state housing department, the dry kind of paperwork that decides what an HOA can and cannot do. I walked away from that world because I hated watching bureaucrats abuse fine print to bully ordinary people. And yet here I was standing in the middle of Spring Hill Estates, watching the president of our HOA, Lorraine Mathers, do something so outrageous I could hardly believe it was real. She had cornered my sister Natalie because of a garden, a simple 12 by 12 patch of cucumbers and tomatoes built out of untreated wood and memory. A garden she made to honor our mom who died last spring. Lorraine said Natalie stole mulch from the HOA shed. We had receipts. Didn't matter. Lorraine didn't want the truth, she wanted submission. That night I found Natalie curled up too shaken to speak. She whispered one thing, "If I fight them, will they destroy the garden?" That's all she cared about, not her dignity, not the trauma, just the little green space she built. And that broke me. Because I knew Lorraine was counting on that, on fear, on shame, on the hope we'd stay quiet. I filed a complaint, not with the HOA, but with the state attorney general. I knew the boundaries of HOA power, and what Lorraine had done wasn't just cruel, it was illegal. Still, while I waited for wheels to turn, the board came at us with citations: fence too tall, grass too long, compost odor, hostile tone. Natalie shut her curtains. She slept light, jumped at gravel crunching outside. And I'll admit for a moment, I doubted myself. Maybe I was stirring up trouble that would only make her life worse. Maybe this was unwinnable. I hated myself for thinking that, but the thought was there. What if I just let it go? But every time I pictured that shed, every time I remembered Natalie's wide, wet eyes, I knew letting it go wasn't an option. So I walked the neighborhood. I asked questions. At first, doors stayed shut. People peered through screens and said no trouble here. But slowly the cracks showed. Mrs. Goer, the retired librarian, told me they threatened her over a hummingbird feeder she'd had for 12 years. Victor, a limping old man, showed me where they blocked his driveway because he challenged a sidewalk citation. A mixed-race couple was fined for a cactus and then again for a pride flag. A single dad was fined for parking his work truck in his own driveway. Patterns emerged. Lorraine wasn't enforcing rules, she was weaponizing them. Then came Julie Tran, board member, always standing behind Lorraine with her clipboard eyes down. At the HOA's meet and greet, I caught her alone. I told her, "You were there that day." She flinched, wouldn't deny it. Her lips trembled. She said Lorraine punishes people who speak out. She looked trapped. That's when I knew she was the crack in Lorraine's wall. The crack widened when I pulled surveillance footage from Westcore Security, the outside vendor that managed cameras. 14 minutes of video. No sound one angle, but enough. Natalie led into the shed by Lorraine and 2 others. Door shut. Nothing inside visible. But outside you could see body language board members smirking. Julie clutching her clipboard. Lorraine cold and still. And then Natalie emerging, cardigan-clutched eyes fixed on the ground. Proof. I encrypted the footage, backed it up 6 ways. Later, in a dim church parking lot, Julie finally handed me what I needed: a copy of the board's emergency schedule, showing no vote, no notice, no minutes. And then she signed a statement in her own hand. Natalie did not give informed consent. It was coercion. Each word seemed to cost her, but she signed it anyway. I walked away from that lot shaking. I had the video, I had the witness, and I had the will to burn Lorraine's paper castle to the ground. I spread everything across my dining table: citations, bylaws, maps, Julie's affidavit, still frames from the footage. I built a timeline: 31 events, color-coded violations, witness accounts, legal breaches. By the end, it was a perfect storm of abuse. I drafted the complaint, 43 pages, clean, chronological, airtight. No outrage, no adjectives, just facts sharp enough to cut. I named the file Spring Hill Complaint AAG filing.pdf. When I saved it, my hands trembled. The next morning I dropped it with the Attorney General's field office. Investigator Miller, an old colleague, looked me in the eye and said, "You're sitting on a bomb, Brandon. We'll move fast." I left the building lighter like gravity tilted in my favor. That night a journalist friend texted me she'd heard board members were panicking. Lorraine's fortress of silence was cracking. But Lorraine wasn't done. She called a community reconnection event in the garden, the same ground where she humiliated Natalie. Folding chairs, cheap lemonade banners that read, "Beautify Spring Hill." It was a performance, a preemptive PR stunt. At 10 sharp she tapped the mic, her pearls gleaming. "We want to create transparency, really bring the neighborhood together." My blood boiled. I stepped forward. "We're not here because of misunderstandings," I said. "We're here because someone crossed a legal line and thought no one would challenge it." Lorraine's eyes locked on mine. "This is not the forum," she snapped. "No," I said, "the forum is with the Attorney General's office, and they'll be arriving any moment." Right then, a black sedan pulled up. 3 people stepped out, badges tucked at their belts, clipboards in hand. The crowd hushed. Lorraine froze. Julie was standing in the back, arms crossed, eyes unflinching now. She stepped forward, her voice shaking but steady. "I was there during the shed incident, and I didn't speak up when I should have. There was no theft, no vote, no discussion. Lorraine made that call on her own." The crowd gasped. Lorraine hissed, "This is not the time for accusations." Julie cut her off. "It's exactly the time. You didn't just abuse your position, you used it to humiliate a pregnant woman. You closed the door and called it policy." Silence. Residents shifted, whispers spreading like fire. One voice rose. She made her take her clothes off. Murmurs turned to disgust. Lorraine's face went pale. The AG investigator stepped forward. Calm, deliberate. "We've reviewed surveillance footage and a signed affidavit from a sitting board member. We've documented patterns of retaliatory enforcement. Effective immediately, our office is opening a formal investigation. We recommend the board suspend all enforcement actions until further review." Lorraine stammered about discretion, about overreach, but no one cared. The board behind her stayed seated, eyes down. Neighbors weren't afraid anymore. They were angry. For the first time, Lorraine's power evaporated in front of her. I stepped closer and said the only words that mattered. "It's over." No applause, no cheering, just a heavy silence where something had broken clean, a line that could never be crossed again. Lorraine resigned the next morning. No apology, just a typed notice taped to the clubhouse door. And that's where my story ends, not with celebration, not with champagne, but with the fall of someone who thought fear could be law. Because silence isn't safety. It never was.